political action committees, labor unions, but very little of it comes from average citizens like you and like me. Corporations, in that there's no limits, can contribute huge sums of money. In fact, almost $2.5 million in 2009 alone came specifically and directly from corporations. Let's take a look at a specific example. We're not here to name names, but again, since 2006, one Utah corporation has spent nearly $2 million in total between direct contributions to candidates, state legislative candidates, congressional candidates, and another $1 million on lobbyists. Gee, what do you suppose they want in return for all that money? Well, at least they spread it around. They give to legislators on both sides of the aisle. Over 80% of the city legislators receive campaign contributions from this one corporation. This again, according to Robert Gerke and Rebecca Walsh of the Salt Lake Tribune. Even some legislators have concerns about how campaign contributions can be used. This comes from a current legislator's personal blog on the topic, where he points out that legislators can spend their contributions on anything they want, including personal contributions. And he goes on to mention items such as clothing, digital cameras, car repairs, travel costs, not only for themselves, but for family members. And some legislators have even used campaign contributions to pay themselves an additional salary or hire family members. Another, did you know that in Utah, legislators can be and are lobbyists? And until this last session, there wasn't even a revolving door limitation on how soon a former legislator could become a lobbyist. And in fact, at the start of the 2009 session, we had the former Speaker of the House open the 2009 session, hand the gavel over to the new Speaker of the House, walked out of the chamber, and was immediately working as a lobbyist. At least now they have to wait a year. That was a law that was passed in the last session. However, when you look further at that law, what became apparent is that they'd left a large loophole in this law. The only people who couldn't immediately become a lobbyist are those that wanted to go to work for a lobbying firm whose primary business is that of lobbying. However, if you wanted to be the lobbyist for some company, there was no prohibition against that. You were only prohibited from working for a company whose primary business was that of lobbying. And so it didn't turn out to be much of a limitation. We in Utah even allow legislators who are currently serving as legislators to be paid lobbyists while they serve. Again, the Daily Herald and Brock Villegas of the Associated Press reported on this story. Something new came up just a couple weeks ago, where a current legislator who recently lost his job had some assistance from a group of lobbyists who sent word out to other lobbyists asking if they had employment for this unemployed legislator. Now, this unemployed legislator happens to chair the Health and Human Services Committee. We don't know if he's been offered a job yet, but there certainly would be lobbyists and corporations that would be interested in having the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee work for them. Paul Raleigh and the Tribune reported this on September 10th. We believe, with respect to leadership positions in both the House and the Senate, one would hope that positions of leadership would be given to those legislators who had demonstrated some meritorious service. You'd think you'd want the leaders to be elected as someone who demonstrated true leadership and meritorious values. Well, here's the pattern we see happening. Lobbyists will give money to legislators. Some legislators turn right around and give that money to other legislators. There are legislators that have so much money in their campaign accounts and may not even face re-election, opposition in re-election, that they have money to give to others. Not surprisingly then, the person who gave the money oftentimes becomes the elected leader. Well, here's a real example. One legislator had over $300,000 sitting in his campaign account. That same legislator gave much of his campaign donations to fellow House members, hopefully endearing them to vote for him as Speaker just one more time. And that same legislator then served as Speaker of the House for 2 full terms. Again, sourced by Bob Burdick of the Deseret News. Utah is also near the bottom in the area of conflict of interest disclosure. One would hope that when legislators vote on important matters that affect business in the state, that you and I, their constituents, would know if they have a personal financial conflict of interest. Well, according to the Center for Public Integrity, Utah receives an F for disclosure of outside ties and ranks 47th in the nation for making that basic information available to the public. We received a whopping 9.5 score out of a possible 100 points. Again, according to a group out of UCLA, School of Law and the California Voter Foundation, when they graded state disclosure laws, they gave Utah a slight increase in that F. They gave us a D minus. Maybe we've improved a little over the year. Again, ranking 40 out of the 50 states. The question we ask you and have asked ourselves is the current system working? Well, in the past session alone, we did see a number of new ethics bills. Now, we believe this was due largely to a fuss that was made in the 2008 session about the ethics complaint, the ethics process. So we saw a lot of activity around bills that were filed. Most, however, never got out of the Rules Committee. There were a few that passed, a total of 5, but again, they were watered down, they had some loopholes in them, they didn't change much in terms of how business is conducted. There was an ethics committee created that was to meet during the interim, but at this point, no changes have been even proposed, let alone made. Again, the Deseret News editorialized that there are occasions when lawmakers refuse to do the bidding of the people. They either can't or won't institute meaningful legislative ethics reforms despite years of public opinion polls and other measures that tell us Utahns clearly want it. The question again, is the current system working? Well, the Ogden Standard Examiner characterized our legislature as being experts at excusing bad ethics.